Have you ever dealt with an authority figure so cruel, so pathetic, so irritating that you wanted to call them out only to realize that it would not be ultimately worth it? I have sometimes, and so have two characters that I'm bringing up, Ginger Fowley and Stanley Hudson. These two characters in otherwise lighthearted shows faced an episode where they couldn't take a leader's power anymore and berated them for it only to be punished for doing so. But one does the concept better, and you'll see which one eventually. Let's get started. The first episode in this analysis is the late season 2 as told by Ginger episode, appropriately titled Driven to Extremes. In this story, Ginger's normal teacher, Ms. Zorsky, is out with the flu, leaving to a replacement, a deadly substitute teacher aptly named Miss Grimley. Off the bat, she assigns authoritarian rules like no talking unless explicitly spoken to, and face the desk away from her, along with essays of upwards of 2,000 words per class. The thing is, though, there's so much ambiguity with her character. As cruel as she is, we have no idea what made her snap or how she got to be a teacher to begin with, much less a substitute. But, oh well. Her verbal abuse gets stronger and stronger, assigning punishments for so much as smirking, and finally the students become fed up. It comes to the point where the students rebuttal by toilet papering and egging her house. This brings up a lot of questions like, how do the kids know where she lives? Why can't they report her behavior to another teacher, let alone the principal? What do they think Grimley's family will react to their attack? Does Grimley even have a family of her own? And we pretty much get none of these answered. Well, it's kind of implied that Grimley doesn't have any family nearby, as when they do try to vandalize her home, Ginger puts a stop to it by taking the blood to the eggs as the kids run off, TP and all. Grimley opens the door and confronts that she stopped caring about what the children think of her many years ago. And again, this begs a question about her 60 plus years of teaching. What made the students turn back on her? But looking back on it now, it kinda doesn't matter, as she has the power and could do whatever she feels like doing. The following Monday, the students are predictably punished for their prank, including Ginger, but upon realizing how her friends would have ostracized her for taking sides with Grimley, she decides to take a stand. She pushes her desk back forward and chews the teacher out for her cruelty and active hard towards the students, and how she could never replace Miss Zorsky. The title of the episode stands out, as she was driven to extremes to retort the sub that she can't demand respect, she must earn it. However, the episode suddenly ends with Ginger getting detention for the whole day. I understand why Ginger rebutted, and while she was indeed earning respect back from her peers with her rant, regardless of who your teacher is, if you dislike the rules, there will be deep punishment, even if they are cruel to the bone. And you have to follow the rules. It's only fair and extremely disrespectful to do otherwise. The thing is, though, I can't fully sympathize for Grimley because I have no idea what made her snap. But the one thing that I did learn about her was that she was voiced by none other than Billy West. Yeah, Ren and Stimpy's VAs. I didn't see it coming, so that performance is honestly the best part of the episode, because West really sells the dark female voice here. He was amazing. I do, however, have a headcanon about Grimley. Here goes. Grimley was an excellent student, but no matter what she accomplished, nothing was good enough for her parents. Even when she got valedictorian, her parents berated her, and at this point, she berated them back, and they went their separate ways. Despite her resentment towards her folks, her academic success was reflected on how she legitimately looked up to her teachers, so she wanted to follow her leaders, but she was never able to get a traditional teacher position, so she was stuck as a substitute where she was belittled by the younglings, and to give herself therapy and use her power to full advantage, she makes all students who belittle her go through the intense work that she had done in an attempt to earn respect of any kind. With that in mind, we could be on the mindset that Grimley was in the right after all to discipline Ginger and even her friends, but I can't but feel that things got too out of hand for television standards. So let's take a look at an episode aimed at an older demographic. The Office's Season 4 episode, Did I Stutter? In this episode, Michael is having a meeting and insisting Stanley to give his feedback, but stuck in the crossword puzzle that he usually is, he refuses. Michael demands him multiple times to the point where Stanley angrily utters the titular phrase. Michael is understandably speechless about this insubordination and retreats to his office to consider how to deal with it. This is especially hard for Michael because he tries to be a people pleaser, but disrespecting boundaries and general personal differences are holding him back. Stanley, meanwhile, having dealt with family problems all his life, is commonly less than pleased to be in a mundane, low-paying job, so there was going to be a point of lashing out, and it was today. Toby, Michael's nemesis, comes in and states that he needs to punish Stanley, but Michael dismisses Toby like he always would, stating that Stanley couldn't have been serious, but Toby says that discipline in this case is necessary. Later on, Dwight tries to help Michael by explaining who else could take action against Stanley: Jim, Ryan, and even Schrute himself, but upon revealing his true plan to overtake the business, Michael recants and takes matters back into his own hands. He tells everyone that he will falsely fire Stanley to teach him a lesson, and everyone is very negative about this. And Stanley is naturally furious when Michael tells him this. He goes as far as to threaten to sue Michael for his blunders that were worth well over a decade, but Michael tells him that this was all just a ruse. However, this only makes Stanley even more livid, chewing out Michael for how stupid his actions have been all the time. Instead of whining, Michael puts on a professional face and says that he accepts Stanley's view of him, but what he can't accept is his attitude. Michael is his boss, and so he declares that Stanley must live by his rules. Michael knows that what he's saying isn't perfect, but it's the best thing that he can come up with to appease Stanley, and shockingly, it really is. Stanley accepts Michael's new stance because it is what he wants to see in a boss, and this pays off the next day when Stanley gives a more polite response at the next meeting. Now here's the discrepancy. Which of these stories is better? And to be honest, I have to pick Michael versus Stanley. For one thing, since Michael and Stanley have been characters in every given episode up to this point, let alone 4 seasons, we get to know all about them. Michael is childish, impulsive, but we ultimately know that he's well-meaning as he wants to be liked by everyone, and given how hard his childhood was, we can sympathize with him pretty significantly because we all want to be liked by whomever possible, yet it's very hard to make it come through fruition. Stanley, on the other hand, is grumpy and no-nonsense. He wants a good life for himself, but the mundanity and chaos of the office in question brings his chances down, so he stopped caring and resorts to crossword puzzles. Seeing their disparate personalities clash is very engaging because both sides have valid arguments. Stanley tells Michael that he can't run the office with an immature, inconsiderate personality, and Michael tells Stanley that he can't be nasty to him no matter how different the rules are for his standards. It fits very well in a 22-minute time frame, and all flows very naturally, given how it all fits in a one-day timeline, and all the actions fall well into the pattern as the story progresses. Getting back to Ginger, we hardly actually know Grimley's life before getting to school, so it disengages the viewers from her point of view for lacking any reasoning to have some edge on her. Ginger's motives on her substitute flip-flop significantly between knowing that she's more than a bitter ass and knowing that she'd never change her ways anyhow. And given how her mother Lois was completely absent from this episode, Ginger did not go to an adult that she respected and trusted in this hardship to deal with it in a compromising fashion, and lashed out at the teacher and was sentenced to detention. While you could make the argument that she didn't know too much better since she was only 13 here, Ginger should have considered talking to the principal about all these issues, although in hindsight, given the son cut to detention, there's also the arguable implication that he sent her there rather than Grimley, and it was certainly a more appropriate discipline than being suspended, let alone expelled. I would argue that this story could have worked better in a Dublin story to have us explore Grimly herself and then makes the students obey her properly while still not fully liking her. Yet the show actually has only one of those, and that's the graduation special. Yes, there are 3 triple-length specials, but that's besides the point. In short, the office's theme of disagreements of a negative authority figure works better than Ginger because it gives us the real time for us to understand everything about each half of the party and work out a resolution that fits very well for them and us to help us grow. More significantly, though, it makes us respect these characters even more for their substantial development. Thanks for listening.